They say family is where the storm stops, but my worst storm began right in our own living room. Have you ever wondered what happens when your pride and sacrifice are treated as a cheap prop for someone else's vanity? Brace yourself. What you are about to hear is not just about a military uniform rejected at a $50,000 party. It is a cold, ruthless dismantling of those who dared to exploit my honor. Welcome to Maya Revenge Stories. My dear listeners, I am truly grateful to have you here today for this journey. Recently, YouTube completely demonetized our channel, leaving us with zero budget to keep this platform running. If you find value in today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so our dedicated team can cover their basic living expenses and continue creating these stories for you. You can easily donate by scanning the PayPal QR code right on your screen, or by clicking the PayPal link pinned in the description and comment section below. Now, let us begin the main story. My name is Iris Johnston, and I was 34 years old when I realized that the people who shared my DNA were nothing more than cruel strangers wrapped in expensive silk. It was a crisp evening in Seattle when I pushed open the heavy brass and glass doors of the Emerald Wave Yacht Club. The contrast was immediate and sickening. Inside, the air smelled of imported orchids, vintage champagne, and the suffocating scent of old money. Outside, I had just left a world of dirt, sweat, and the chilling reality of sacrifice. I stood in the grand foyer, feeling like a dark stain on a pristine white canvas. My United States Army operational camouflage pattern uniform was deeply wrinkled, clinging to my exhausted frame. Dried brown mud caked the thick soles of my combat boots, flaking off onto the polished marble floor with every small shift of my weight. My hair was tied back in a rushed, imperfect bun, and my eyes were heavily bloodshot from over 48 hours of absolute sleep deprivation. I looked at the crowd gathered for my younger sister Chloe's engagement party. It was an event that cost tens of thousands of dollars, a lavish display of sheer vanity. Soft jazz music floated from a grand piano in the corner, blending with the polite, high society laughter of women in designer gowns and men in tailored tuxedos. As I stepped further into the ballroom, the music seemed to fade, replaced by a sudden, heavy wave of whispers. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, blinking in disbelief and judgment. To them, I was not a sister or a daughter returning from duty. I was an alien creature that had crawled out of the trenches to defile their perfect evening. Before I could even search the crowd for a familiar face, a blur of white silk rushed toward me. It was Chloe. Her face, usually painted with a practiced, radiant smile, was completely contorted with deep shame and hot anger. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my heavy sleeve, and pulled me toward a shadowed alcove near the terrace. Her voice was a sharp, furious whisper. "What are you doing here looking like this? Iris, are you completely insane? You are ruining the entire aesthetic of my engagement party. Look at you. Everyone is staring. Did you seriously have to wear that hideous outfit just to play the martyr and steal my spotlight on the most important night of my life?" I looked down at my younger sister, noting the sparkling multi-carat diamond on her finger. I wanted to tell her about where I had been, about the heavy weight that was still pressing down on my chest, but the sheer venom in her eyes silenced me. She did not want an explanation. She only saw a threat to her social status. Before I could utter a single word, Marcus strolled over, holding a crystal glass of expensive scotch. Marcus was Chloe's fiancé, a 28-year-old tech entrepreneur who ran a struggling startup but dressed like a billionaire on Wall Street. He looked me up and down, a smug, mocking smirk playing on his lips. He turned back toward a small group of wealthy investors who had followed him, raising his glass in my direction. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," Marcus announced loudly, his voice dripping with condescension. "Hey, Iris, did you happen to bring your service rifle into the yacht club? Or are you just here to shoot down the mood? Please tell me you aren't going to threaten the caterers if the caviar isn't up to military standards." The crowd around him let out a wave of awkward, polite laughter. Marcus beamed, clearly thrilled with his own cruel wit. using my exhaustion as a stepping stone to look clever in front of his potential financial backers. Chloe chuckled nervously, leaning into his shoulder, completely validated by his mockery. Then, the crowd parted, and my mother stepped forward. There was no warmth in her eyes, no maternal instinct prompting her to ask if I was all right, or why my face was hollowed out by fatigue. She looked at my mud-stained boots and my wrinkled uniform with utter disgust, without a single word of greeting. She raised her hand, her glittering diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light, and pointed her index finger directly toward the grand exit. Her voice was ice, cutting through the residual laughter of the room. "Get out, Iris," she said, her tone flat and unyielding. "You will leave this premises right now. I will not have you embarrassing this family in front of our city's elite. Do not even think about returning to this family or speaking to us until you learn how to dress appropriately and conduct yourself in a manner that actually matches our status." The silence in the ballroom was deafening. I looked at my mother, then at Chloe, and finally at Marcus. I did not offer an explanation. I did not tell them about the 9-hour drive or the funeral. I did not cry, because the army had taught me how to bleed internally without showing a single drop on the outside. I simply took a deep breath, let my hands fall to my sides, and quietly turned on my heels. My muddy boots made a dull thudding sound against the marble as I walked away. As the heavy glass doors closed behind me, cutting off the soft jazz and the warmth of the room, I heard the faint, collective sigh of relief from my own mother and sister. They had successfully purged the blemish from their perfect night, completely unaware that the storm they had just unleashed would eventually burn their entire world to the ground. The heavy Seattle rain hammered against the rusted roof of my old pickup truck, creating a relentless, hollow drumming sound that matched the pounding in my skull. I sat shivering in the driver's seat, the cold dampness of my uniform seeping deep into my bones. On the passenger seat, my phone vibrated uncontrollably, lighting up the dark cabin with a rapid succession of toxic notifications. Even without picking it up, I could read the previews flashing across the cracked screen, messages from my mother detailing how thoroughly I had humiliated her, texts from Chloe calling me a selfish disaster. I stared at the harsh blue light for a long moment before reaching over and pressing the power button, holding it down until the screen finally faded to black. The sudden silence inside the truck was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic thudding of the wiper blades pushing water off the windshield. A sharp, familiar pain flared up in my left shoulder, a lingering parting gift from a severe shrapnel wound I had received 3 years ago. The damp cold always made it worse, but tonight, the ache felt completely unbearable. My hands trembled slightly as I rummaged through the center console, pushing aside empty coffee cups and old receipts until my fingers brushed against a small plastic prescription bottle. I popped the cap, shook 2 thick white painkillers into my palm, and swallowed them dry. The pills scratched painfully down my throat, but I welcomed the harsh sensation. It was real. It was grounding. It kept me from completely falling apart in the sterile darkness of the yacht club parking lot. My family genuinely believed I had worn my combat uniform to a multi-thousand-dollar engagement party as a petty stunt to steal the spotlight. They had no idea that I never wanted to wear it at all. They did not know that for the past 48 hours, I had been stationed at Vanguard Reach Air Base, completely cut off from the outside world during a classified disaster rescue operation deep within the treacherous northern mountain range. There had been no time for aesthetic choices. There had only been mud, unstable rocks, and the desperate, frantic race against the clock to pull trapped civilians out of a collapsed underground facility. I closed my eyes, but instead of sleep, I saw her face. Specialist Maya Lin. She was a combat medic, only 22 years old, with a bright laugh that could warm the darkest barracks and a spirit that absolutely refused to break. When the secondary collapse happened in the lower tunnel, trapping our squad with the surviving civilians, the breathable air supply had dropped to lethal levels within minutes. Maya had a working oxygen mask. A terrified, hyperventilating civilian did not. Without a single second of hesitation, Maya took off her mask and strapped it tightly onto the civilian's face. We dug them out 3 hours later. The civilian survived. Maya did not. The thick brown mud clinging to my boots was not from some careless trek through a dirty puddle on the street. It was the sacred soil of the National Cemetery. I had just served as the lead honor guard escort for Maya's flag-draped casket. I had stood at rigid attention under the freezing rain as the bugler played the final salute, listening to the agonizing, soul-crushing cries of a mother who had just lost her only daughter. The moment the funeral concluded, I had sprinted directly to my truck, still in my duty uniform, and driven 9 continuous hours down the highway. I did not stop to eat a meal. I did not stop to change clothes. I drove through a haze of pure exhaustion simply because I had promised Chloe, 6 months ago, that I would be there for her engagement. I pushed my body to the absolute physical breaking point to honor my commitment to my sister, only to be thrown out like garbage because my fresh grief did not look glamorous enough for her social media photographs. Sitting there in the freezing truck, a bitter, heavy realization washed over me. I had dedicated my entire adult life to serving my country. I had bled on foreign soil, carried the broken bodies of my friends, and sacrificed my youth so that people like Marcus and Chloe could live in a safe, comfortable bubble where their biggest crisis was a mismatched outfit or a bad appetizer. I spent my entire life protecting others, yet I had absolutely nowhere in this world that truly welcomed me. I was a sturdy shield that everyone was perfectly happy to hide behind during the storm, but entirely eager to discard in the mud the moment the sky cleared. I rested my forehead against the cold steering wheel, waiting for the medication to dull the physical agony. Just as I was about to turn the key in the ignition and drive away into the lonely night, my phone screen unexpectedly illuminated one last time before powering down completely. It was not another angry message from my mother or my sister. It was a single text from an unknown, blocked number. The message was brief, striking through the silence of the truck like a precisely aimed bullet. "They do not deserve your presence today. Captain Johnston, I saw everything." 14 days evaporated into a punishing, relentless cycle of physical exertion and tactical drills. I completely severed all communication with my family. I blocked my mother's phone number. I blocked my sister's number. I routed all their incoming emails directly to a hidden trash folder without reading a single word. Instead of drowning in their toxic drama, I buried myself entirely in my work at the Vanguard Reach Air Base. I ran 10 miles every single morning before the sun even breached the horizon. I strapped an 80-pound rucksack to my back and marched up the steep mountain trails until my legs went entirely numb. I spent hours at the live firing range, letting the deafening crack of rifle fire drown out the lingering, humiliating echoes of the yacht club. I was methodically trying to rebuild the psychological armor my own blood relatives had managed to pierce. Then, on the morning of the 15th day, my commanding officer unexpectedly summoned me. I was not being deployed for another rescue mission. I was being ordered to attend a mandatory civilian liaison meeting in downtown Seattle. A black military town car drove me from the base to a towering glass skyscraper in the financial district. A private security escort guided me directly to the top floor, where the heavy wooden double doors opened into the sprawling, minimalist executive suite of a major West Coast venture capital firm. Sitting behind a massive mahogany desk was a woman who commanded the room without moving a single muscle. It was Eleanor Vance. Before she became one of the most ruthless and powerful venture capitalists in the tech industry, she was a 3-star general in the United States military. She was a living legend in our tactical circles, known for her brilliant strategic mind and zero tolerance for incompetence. "Have a seat, Captain Johnston," she instructed, her voice calm but carrying the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. "I am the one who sent you that text message 2 weeks ago. I was at the engagement party. I saw the entire pathetic spectacle your family put you through." I sat down slowly, keeping my posture rigidly straight, my mind racing to connect the pieces. "With all due respect, ma'am, why were you there?" General Vance did not smile. She reached into her top desk drawer, pulled out a thick, glossy, professionally bound dossier and tossed it violently onto the glass table between us. It landed with a heavy, definitive thud. "Your future brother-in-law invited me," she stated coldly. "Marcus is currently trying to secure a $5 million seed investment from my firm for his new survival and tactical equipment startup. He wanted to wine and dine me. He wanted to show me how deeply connected he is to the military community." I stared at the pristine white folder, a cold knot forming in the pit of my stomach. General Vance gestured toward it with a sharp nod. "Open it." I flipped open the heavy cover. The very first page hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was a high-resolution photograph of me in my full combat gear, taken during a joint training exercise 2 years ago. Right below my face, printed in bold, elegant typography, was a completely fabricated corporate title, Senior Strategic Advisor. I frantically turned the pages, my breath catching in my throat. The entire pitch deck was built entirely on my name. Marcus had stolen my classified service record summaries, heavily redacted them, and plastered them across his promotional materials. There were detailed paragraphs outlining my deployments, my tactical expertise, and my supposed endorsement of his cheap, unverified survival equipment. He was telling investors that I personally tested and approved his tactical water filtration systems and thermal emergency blankets during live combat operations. He even included a fabricated quote, claiming I said his gear was the only reason my squad survived the northern mountains. He was not just stealing my image, he was actively risking civilian lives by falsely endorsing unproven, potentially defective survival equipment with my hard-earned military credentials. "It gets much worse," General Vance said, sliding a second, thinner file across the desk. "My team ran a deep background check and audited his internal corporate communications before I even considered signing any checks. Read the printed emails." I picked up the crisp, white sheets of paper. They were leaked internal emails between Marcus and his public relations director. In the messages, the director asked if I would be willing to do a live media interview to promote the brand. Marcus's typed response made my blood run ice cold. "Do not put her on camera," Marcus had written. "She is just a broken, damaged loser who clings to her past glory. We just need the photographs in uniform and her military credentials to milk the veteran sympathy angle. The investors eat that patriotic garbage up. Just keep her face on the brochures and keep her out of the actual office. She lacks the basic social grace for our corporate image anyway." My hands started to shake, not from sorrow, but from a profound, blinding rage. He outlined a deliberate strategy to exploit the emotional weight of my service. He used my uniform as a shiny marketing prop to manipulate millions of dollars out of wealthy investors, all while standing in a yacht club laughing at me, treating me like dirt beneath his expensive shoes. "He built a multi-million-dollar house of cards on your back, Captain," General Vance said softly, leaning forward and resting her elbows on the desk, her eyes locking onto mine. "He thinks he has successfully played all of us. He thinks he can insult the uniform in private and cash in on it in public." "What do you want to do about it, ma'am?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerously calm whisper. "Tomorrow night, I am hosting a high-profile investment signing gala at the Grand Regency Hotel," she replied, her eyes narrowing with predatory precision. "Marcus believes he's walking onto that grand stage to receive a $5 million check. Hundreds of elite investors and tech media journalists will be in the room." General Vance stood up and walked around the desk, stopping right beside my chair. "I absolutely despise corporate parasites who steal military valor for personal profit. I want you to attend that gala with me. Iris, we are going to administer a final test for Marcus. And when he fails, we are going to tear his entire fraudulent empire to the ground." The atmosphere inside the luxury downtown penthouse had grown completely suffocating over the past 14 days. Chloe sat rigidly on the edge of the plush velvet sofa, nervously watching Marcus pace the entire length of the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was constantly on edge, snapping violently at the slightest provocation or inconvenience. His mobile phone was perpetually glued to his hand, and his once charming mood swings were rapidly becoming aggressive. The most bizarre and unsettling change, however, was his extreme, almost frantic paranoia regarding his silver work laptop. He carried the machine absolutely everywhere, taking it into the kitchen, the bedroom, and even locking the bathroom door when he showered. He had explicitly forbidden Chloe from even touching the mahogany desk where it usually rested. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Marcus received a frantic phone call from a minor investor. He rushed out of the apartment in an absolute panic, leaving the heavy front door slightly ajar. In his blind haste, he made a fatal error. He left his laptop sitting wide open on the marble kitchen island. The screen was brightly illuminated. Chloe stepped closer, her heart beating a rapid rhythm against her ribs. She told herself she was just going to close the lid to protect his privacy, but as her hand reached out, her eyes caught the bold, capitalized subject line of an email displayed prominently in the center of the screen. Urgent strategy update regarding maximizing the Iris Johnston female soldier asset. Chloe felt a sharp, icy chill run straight down her spine. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second before grabbing the wireless mouse and scrolling down the thread. It was a lengthy exchange between Marcus and his lead public relations director. The director wrote that they needed to push the promotional materials out to the public immediately to secure the $5 million investment before Iris caught wind of the marketing campaign. Marcus replied in the next message, stating that Iris was completely isolated from the corporate world and would never find out. He ordered the team to squeeze every single ounce of veteran sympathy they could extract from her image. He called her a useful but clueless pawn. Chloe found her breathing growing shallow and rapid. Her trembling hand moved the cursor to minimize the email application. Hidden underneath it was a web browser with a local military news site open. The bold black headline read, "Vanguard Reach Air Base mourns tragic loss in devastating tunnel collapse rescue." Chloe scrolled down the page, her stomach twisting into painful knots. Halfway down the article was a high-resolution press photograph. It was Iris. She was wearing her formal dress uniform, her face terribly pale and hollowed out, holding a framed portrait of a brightly smiling young female medic. The caption below the photograph stated that the military funeral honors took place at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the exact same day as the engagement party. Chloe stared blankly at the date and the time. The horrifying reality hit her with the crushing force of a freight train. Suddenly, everything made agonizing sense. The thick brown mud caked on Iris's heavy boots, the deep, dark circles under her bloodshot eyes, the complete, hollow silence when their mother yelled at her. Iris had not come to the yacht club to steal the attention or play a dramatic martyr. She had just buried a fallen comrade. She had driven for 9 straight hours through pure, blinding grief just to keep a simple promise to her younger sister. A wave of profound, nauseating guilt washed over Chloe, forcing her to lean heavily against the counter to keep from collapsing. The memory of the yacht club replayed vividly in her mind, completely distorted by this horrific new truth. She remembered her own shrill, vicious voice accusing Iris of ruining the aesthetic of the evening. She remembered their mother coldly pointing to the door, treating a grieving war hero like a stray animal. They had verbally slaughtered her sister during the absolute darkest, most vulnerable moment of her entire life. Chloe's hands shook violently as she grabbed her mobile phone and dialed Marcus's number. He answered on the second ring, his tone brisk and incredibly impatient. "What is it? Chloe? I am in the middle of a massive crisis here." Marcus snapped through the speaker. "I saw your computer," Chloe choked out, the tears finally spilling over her eyelashes and running hot down her pale cheeks. "I saw the secret emails about Iris. I saw the news article about the military funeral. Marcus, how could you possibly do this? How could you steal her face for your company after the horrific way we treated her that night?" There was a long, chilling silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus finally spoke, all the charming warmth he usually possessed was completely eradicated, replaced by a cold, calculating, sociopathic sneer. "Listen to me very carefully, Chloe," he hissed, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Your sister is a miserable, damaged wreck. She should feel incredibly honored that I am taking her tragic little life and actually building a highly profitable, respectable image out of it. I am the one elevating her useless name. Do not you dare get hysterical on me right now. Tomorrow night is the most important fundraising gala of my entire career. I am securing a $5 million check. You will put on your expensive designer dress. You will smile brightly for the cameras, and you will not say a single word to ruin this evening, or I swear I will cancel the wedding and leave you with nothing. He abruptly ended the call before she could even formulate a reply. Chloe stood entirely frozen in the middle of the massive kitchen, the mobile phone slipping from her trembling fingers and clattering loudly against the hard marble floor. The wealthy, successful man she was about to marry was a complete monster, and far worse, she realized she had been acting exactly like one too. A raw, suffocating desperation clawed painfully at her throat. She snatched her phone off the floor and frantically dialed Iris's number. She dialed it a second time, then a third time. She called 20 times in a row, pacing the hardwood floors, openly sobbing, begging the universe just to hear her sister's voice so she could beg for forgiveness. But every single phone call was met with the same cold, hopeless, endless ringing tone. The line was completely dead, just like the sisterly bond she had so carelessly and arrogantly destroyed. The grand ballroom of the prestigious Grand Regency Hotel was a blinding display of corporate wealth and high society indulgence. Crystal chandeliers suspended from the vaulted ceilings cast a golden shimmering glow over tables draped in heavy velvet. Waiters in pristine white tuxedos glided silently across the floor, carrying silver trays loaded with top-tier champagne and caviar. It was exactly the kind of five-star environment that my family thrived in, an atmosphere built entirely on the illusion of perfection and status. Standing at the center of the illuminated stage was Marcus, looking like the absolute picture of a visionary entrepreneur. He wore a perfectly tailored dark navy suit, his hair immaculately styled, projecting an aura of complete confidence. He leaned into the polished silver microphone, his voice echoing through the massive hall with practiced, charismatic warmth. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are not just building survival equipment," Marcus announced, flashing a brilliant, completely hollow smile at the audience of wealthy tech investors and media personnel. "We are building a legacy of protection. My company is founded on the core principles of patriotism, duty, and a profound, unbreakable connection to our armed forces. We understand the sacrifices our men and women in uniform make every single day. That is exactly why our tactical gear is designed with their unyielding spirit in mind." Sitting in the center of the front row, my mother absolutely beamed with radiant, uncontainable pride. She clapped enthusiastically at every pause in his speech, her eyes shining with the thrill of being associated with such a successful, wealthy future son-in-law. She was entirely captivated by the shiny surface of the evening, completely oblivious to the festering rot hidden just underneath. Right beside her sat Chloe. The contrast between mother and daughter was jarring. Chloe looked like a terrified ghost trapped inside a designer gown. Her face was completely drained of color, possessing the sickly pale hue of someone who had just witnessed a horrific accident. She stared blankly at the floor, her hands trembling so violently in her lap that her diamond engagement ring caught the light in chaotic, frantic flashes. The crushing weight of her recent discovery was suffocating her. Every single word of patriotism and sacrifice that fell from Marcus's lips struck her like a physical blow, making her visibly flinch. But our mother was too utterly absorbed in the glamorous spectacle to even notice her younger daughter spiraling into a total psychological breakdown. "And tonight," Marcus continued, his voice rising in triumphant crescendo, "tonight marks a monumental milestone. It is my absolute honor to invite a true military legend, General Eleanor Vance, up to the stage to officially sign a $5 million investment partnership that will propel our patriotic vision into the future." A wave of polite, wealthy applause rippled through the room. Marcus stood tall, ready to claim his fraudulent victory. But before General Vance could even take a single step toward the podium, the heavy, towering mahogany doors at the very back of the grand ballroom burst open with a loud, resounding crash. The sudden noise instantly severed the applause. The room plunged into absolute silence. Hundreds of heads turned simultaneously toward the entrance. I stepped over the threshold and walked deliberately into the golden light of the ballroom. I was not wearing a wrinkled, mud-stained combat uniform. I was dressed in a razor-sharp, perfectly tailored, pitch-black business suit. My posture was rigid, my chin held high, and my eyes were completely devoid of any emotion. I walked down the center aisle with the slow, predatory grace of a soldier stepping onto a battlefield she had already mapped and conquered. The cold, overwhelming aura I projected instantly suffocated the warm, celebratory atmosphere of the room. Up on the stage, the confident, charismatic mask completely melted off Marcus's face. He turned ash white, his eyes wide with sudden, unadulterated panic as he recognized me. He gripped the edges of the wooden podium so tightly his knuckles turned a stark white. Desperate to maintain control of the rapidly deteriorating situation, he forced a tight, visibly sweating smile and leaned back into the microphone. "And here," Marcus stammered, his voice cracking slightly, betraying his intense terror, "here is our heroic sister, coming to join the celebration tonight." He gestured weakly toward me, hoping the crowd would simply view this as a planned, heartfelt family surprise. But General Vance did not play along. Instead of moving toward the luxurious leather chair where the investment contracts awaited her signature, the retired three-star general bypassed the table entirely and marched directly to the microphone. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Marcus, her presence radiating an intimidating, lethal authority. She looked Marcus dead in the eyes, her expression carved from solid ice, before turning her gaze to the hundreds of elite business professionals sitting in the audience. "There will be no celebration tonight," General Vance declared, her voice booming through the speakers with absolute, uncompromising finality. "And there will certainly be no partnership. I am officially canceling the entire $5 million agreement, effective immediately." A collective, unified gasp echoed through the five-star ballroom. The wealthy investors began murmuring frantically among themselves, exchanging bewildered and alarmed glances. The mother of the bride dropped her crystal champagne glass, the expensive liquid soaking into the luxurious carpet, her jaw slack with absolute shock. Chloe covered her mouth with both trembling hands, tears finally breaking free and streaming down her pale cheeks. The tension in the grand hall spiked to an unbearable, suffocating peak. Every single camera lens, every journalist, and every high-net-worth investor in the room shifted their gaze away from the disgraced tech entrepreneur on the stage, fixing their eyes entirely on me. They waited in breathless, agonizing silence for an explanation to the spectacular, multi-million-dollar execution they had just witnessed. I ascended the 3 carpeted steps to the stage, my heels clicking softly against the polished wood. General Vance stepped back, handing me the silver microphone with a brief, affirming nod. I turned to face the sea of shocked faces. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. True power does not shout. I raised my left hand and gave a sharp signal to the audiovisual technicians stationed at the back of the room. The massive, high-definition projection screen behind Marcus suddenly flickered to life. The glowing corporate logo of his survival company vanished, replaced instantly by a towering, magnified image of my classified military service record. Next to it appeared the fabricated promotional brochures displaying my photograph in full combat gear. "My name is Captain Iris Johnston," I began, my voice echoing evenly across the silent ballroom. "For the past several months, the man standing on this stage has built his entire financial campaign on my name. He has falsely labeled me as his senior strategic advisor. He has forged my signature on product endorsements, claiming I tested his unverified survival equipment during active, highly classified mountain rescue operations." I clicked a small remote in my hand. The screen shifted. Now, towering above us all, were the leaked internal communications between Marcus and his public relations team. He did all of this while explicitly instructing his staff to hide these campaigns from me, I continued, pacing slowly across the stage. He stole the valor, the trauma, and the literal blood of the veteran community to manipulate a $5 million seed investment from you tonight. I clicked the remote one final time, the screen filled with the most damning piece of evidence. It was the email where Marcus explicitly called me a broken, damaged loser who lacked social grace, openly mocking the very veterans he was pretending to revere. The collective gasp from the audience of elite investors and media journalists was absolute poison to his entire existence. The sound of camera shutters exploded like rapid gunfire. I turned away from the crowd and looked down at the front row. I locked eyes with my mother and my younger sister. My mother was completely paralyzed, her face drained of all color, her hands gripping the edges of her velvet chair as if the ground beneath her was giving way. Chloe was weeping openly, her shoulders shaking with violent, uncontrollable sobs. I felt no rage toward them in that moment. I only felt a deep, profound pity. 2 weeks ago, I said, my gaze fixed squarely on my mother, you kicked me out of a party into the freezing rain because my uniform was covered in mud. You humiliated me because I did not fit your perfect, pristine aesthetic. Yet, you happily bowed down to a man who uses that exact same uniform to run a massive corporate fraud. That sentence was the final blow. The absolute truth shattered the fragile glass house they had lived in for so long. Marcus completely lost his mind. The carefully constructed mask of the charming entrepreneur evaporated, revealing the desperate, cornered animal underneath. His face turned a dangerous shade of crimson. "She is lying," he screamed, his voice cracking hysterically. He lunged across the stage, throwing his hands out to violently snatch the microphone from my grasp. "She fabricated all of this because she is jealous. Turn off that screen right now." He did not even make it within 2 feet of me. General Vance's private security detail, consisting of 2 massive former military operatives, intercepted him with brutal efficiency. They tackled Marcus to the hard wooden floor, pinning his arms sharply behind his back. His expensive tailored suit ripped loudly at the shoulder seam. He thrashed and shouted obscenities, completely humiliating himself in front of the exact people he had spent months trying to impress. The fallout was instantaneous and absolute. As security dragged a screaming Marcus out of the ballroom, the investors began frantically making phone calls to their legal teams. The media journalists rushed to file breaking news reports. Marcus lost his entire career in a matter of 5 minutes. His company was staring down the barrel of immediate bankruptcy, and worse, General Vance had already forwarded his forged documents to federal authorities to initiate a massive criminal fraud investigation. Down in the front row, Chloe stood up. She looked at the exit where Marcus had just been dragged away, then looked down at her left hand. With a guttural cry of absolute disgust, she forcefully ripped the heavy diamond engagement ring off her finger. She hurled the expensive piece of jewelry across the room. It bounced off the wooden stage and disappeared into the shadows. Beside her, my mother finally slumped forward, burying her face in her hands, entirely broken by the agonizing realization of her own blinding cruelty. 3 months later, the chaotic dust had finally settled. I sat on the small wooden balcony of my own apartment, enjoying the quiet morning breeze of a sunny Sunday. I held a warm mug of black coffee in my hands, listening to the distant, peaceful sounds of the city waking up. Resting on the small iron table next to me was a thick envelope. It contained a 4-page, tear-stained apology letter from my mother and a completely heartbroken, begging plea for forgiveness from Chloe. They wrote about their deep regrets. They wrote about how they were going to therapy to understand their own toxic behaviors. They begged me to come over for dinner so we could embrace and act like a real family again. Before all of this happened, I would have rushed back to them. I would have sacrificed my own peace to heal their guilt. But the military taught me a lot about establishing secure perimeters. I picked up my mobile phone, opened my text messages, and typed a single, brief reply to both of them. "I need time." I hit send, placed the phone face down on the table, and took a long, slow sip of my coffee. I did not block their numbers this time, but I also did not open the door. For the very first time in my 34 years of life, I smiled a genuine, relieved smile. The ironclad boundaries were finally set, and I was entirely free to walk forward into my own life on my own terms. Thank you so sincerely for listening to this story today. I would absolutely love to know where you are tuning in from, so please let me know your city or country in the comments below. If you found value in today's journey and want to support the hardworking team behind Maya Revenge Stories, please consider helping us with just a $1 donation. You can easily do this by scanning the PayPal QR code currently on your screen, or by using the PayPal link provided in the description and pinned comment. Your kindness ensures our dedicated team can feed their families and continue bringing you more powerful stories. Have a wonderful day, and stay strong.